Hello and welcome to the LSU Baseball Tournament Update, brought to you by Hancock Whitney. I'm Patrick Magee, joined again by Wilson Alexander. He's in Omaha. I'm in New Orleans, so he's having a much better week than I am. Uh, Omaha's exciting, New Orleans less exciting. You put the two side by side. I'd probably rather be in Omaha, so I'd rather be you, Wilson.
New Orleans has a lot going for it as well. I don't know what the weather's been like there. Maybe that's the difference. The weather is a lot less humid here. Still
Yeah.
pretty warm. It gets up into the 90s, but it's more pleasant than what we usually have in South Louisiana this time of year.
I will say it was somewhat pleasant in the French Quarter last night, so it wasn't so bad. If you would, last night was crazy. What was the scene like in Omaha?
It was, sitting in the press box from our perspective, it's a closed press box, and so you can't quite hear exactly how loud the stadium is when the game is being played. But there was so much chatter in the press box about, oh my gosh, this game is incredible. And that's kind of was, I guess, coloring my perspective on the whole thing, because it was. I have no stake in these games as our job as reporters, but my heart was just about pounding out of my chest because every pitch was tense. It was one walk here, a pass ball there, things that in a higher scoring game maybe don't loom quite as big felt huge every single time because of the going 10 innings without a run being scored all the way into the bottom of the 11th before before Tommy White hits the homer. And when he did, everybody you could hear the stadium then. It was amazing to hear the sound of and watch LSU celebrate in that way. And then going down to the field post game, they're playing Colin Baton Rouge. There's chants of LSU, and the players were just so happy. And that was the thing I think that I'll maybe remember most about that night is just the emotion that you saw from LSU's players, the hugs they were giving each other, the way they were screaming and yelling. They're playing for a national championship now. And when you talk to people around who have covered the College World Series for a long time, this game is going to get talked about as one of the best that's ever been played at the College World Series forever. It's up there now in that sort of realm because of the quality of the pitching was incredible all night long. And then for Tommy White to end it the way he did on that walk-off was one of the greatest games that I've witnessed in any sport with my own eyes. It was a fantastic night.
Yeah, it seemed like the odds were kind of stacked against LSU, even though they're so talented. Throughout their games, 3 games with Wake Forest, it seemed like things were kind of leaning Wake Forest way in just terms of pitching that was available and a lot of different things, and they were still able to overcome it. Do you think that really kind of makes them believers, even though, again, they're going in a situation where Florida has the edge in terms of just overall pitching availability and stuff like that? Do you think these guys are believers? They're not any less confident right now? How much swagger do they have coming in?
Oh, they had the same amount of swagger that they had coming into the tournament itself. This is a very confident team. Back in mid-January, they had a meeting, to set their goals for the season. And Jay Johnson asked them what they wanted. Dylan Cruz piped up and said, to win a national championship. And Jay Johnson said, are you sure? Because this is what it's going to take to get there. And that has been this team's goal the entire way through. They knew they had the talent. Jay Johnson said of all the teams that he's coached, he looked at this one as the one that had enough talent to win a national championship. And he almost won a national title in 2016 at Arizona. They came runner-ups there, lost 2 one-run games to fall just short of a title. And so this has been the goal for this team all year. They've had the confidence to back it that goes along with that. And then they have the talent to back up that confidence. But what you've seen out of the pitching staff here in Omaha has just been fantastic. LSU got, a little rough patch, to say the least, coming down the back half of the season with the pitching staff, especially just because of some of the injuries with Garrett Edwards and Chase Shores and trying to figure all that out. But they've been pitching perfectly to this ballpark as well. They're just throwing it, not necessarily just throwing it down the middle, but really throwing a lot of strikes, daring hitters to hit the ball out and elevate, a fly ball that is in this wind just not going to happen. There's been so many balls that teams have seemed like they've hit well against LSU, but they just hang up in the air and they ended up, or they're right at somebody. And so, it's incredible that, 2 shutouts in 3 elimination games, they've allowed 2 runs, their backs against the wall. And there's no reason to believe now that this pitching staff can't continue to do something at least very similar to that when they go to play Florida. We'll see how the weather conditions shape things. Like we said, they pitched to that very well over the last 3 days. There might be some very strong wind gusts expected on Sunday, in particular blowing out. So we'll have to see kind of how LSU manages all that. But this pitching staff is very confident. Jay Johnson has been confident in them, and that hasn't changed just because they won a few games.
Yeah, I know you're really kind of starting to pick apart the Florida matchup a little bit right now. Just your early impressions. You got two SEC teams again in this position. How do Florida and LSU kind of match up against each other?
Well, they're both extremely talented in terms of major league draft prospects, and LSU's got projected possibly the first two picks with Dylan Cruz and Paul Skeens. But Florida's up there with Wyatt Langford and Jack Caglione, who isn't even a prospect this year. He's an MLB draft likely first rounder next year. And I mean, when Jack and Dylan and Paul are the three finalists for the Golden Spikes, and they're all in this one series here. This is as talented a matchup as you're going to find in college baseball. There's future MLB players all across the board. And that's probably the first thing right off the bat that you notice about these teams is that there's just so much talent all over the field. It's interesting. Kevin O'Sullivan was talking today that they're both built in a somewhat similar way to get through the SEC and win SEC, games and get, then host regionals, host super regionals in order to get to this point. They're both constructed with power pitching and power hitting. And they've had to find ways to sort of adapt and change their identity a little bit here in Omaha because of the wind, like we said. But they've both been able to do that because there's so much talent on these teams that when they have a game plan, they're able to then go and execute that to a really high level. And so it'll be interesting to see how this one unfolds over the next couple of days.
How would you say Wes Johnson and really Jay have handled the pitching throughout? I mean, for them to get to this point and have so many tight games is pretty impressive, considering the bullpen was considered a bit of a weak point. How good of a job have they done managing the pitching staff?
A+ across the board, really. I mean, they trusted guys to go and do a good job, and then those players were able to then go and execute, and I mean, to believe in Nate Ackenhausen to start that elimination game against Tennessee, and then not only believe in him to start, but there in the fifth inning, Tennessee's got a chance to score, runners in scoring position, and Jay Johnson believed there in Nate Ackenhausen that he'd be able to get out of the jam. He did, and then he was able to pitch into the seventh inning and continue to eat up some innings. Got this very similar thing out of Griffin Herring the very next day. And these are guys who have been talented and contributors to LSU's team this season, but they've taken it to another level here in Omaha. Riley Cooper has pitched a ton. He's been super reliable. He's like, the safety blanket and the pitching staff in a way, but he's, got Omaha experience, and he throws 4 pitches and he's throwing them for strikes. And that's been the thing, is that they've just believed it, and throwing the ball over the plate, throw strikes, make teams hit them and dare them to try to hit a ball out. That's not really going to happen here. The only time LSU has gotten hit very much at all was maybe in the first game against Tennessee, because the wind was blowing out. And even then, they only gave up 3 runs. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, they've given up 8 runs over 40+ innings. I think the staff ERA here in Omaha is 1.57. You're going to win a lot of games pitching like that.
Yeah. Will we see Paul Skeens again?
If they get to Monday, I think that you would. It would be, I think, impossible to bring him back by Sunday's game. Certainly, he will not pitch Saturday. That's too much of a tight turnaround after throwing as much as he did last night. But LSU, the way that they kind of set this up is, probably for Ty Floyd to pitch the first game. And then maybe Nate Ackenhausen starts Saturday, but you could also go with Griffin Herring, or you're going to have a lot of guys available in those first 2 games. And if you can get to Monday, then probably a combination of Paul and Thatcher Hurd would be available again. It's a even shorter turnaround. That would be 3 days rest after going on 4 days rest. But this is a moment that Paul Skeens is not going to want to be kept out of. If they are sitting there for one game to win it all, I would have a hard time believing that he is not going to want the baseball and pitch on that day.
How much fun has Omaha been the last week or so?
Yeah, it's been a blast. I mean, there's a lot of LSU fans that have been up here. There's going to be even more, over this weekend. There's a lot of people who we talked to. I think I talked about this the other day, who came in for the first weekend, left, and then planned on coming back for a championship series. And now LSU's there, and with a chance to win its first one since 2009, which in this program feels like an eternity, right? But not only that, but to do it against Florida, the team that you lost to in 2017, would be maybe a little bit cathartic in a way as well. And so it's good. There's been a lot of energy around here, a lot of support for LSU. It feels like we just kind of live here now. We've been here for so long.
Yeah.
But it's been quite fun. Absolutely.
Yeah. How do you feel about LSU going, and what just your general feel right now? Does it feel like LSU is a bit of a team of destiny at this point, or Florida had it, was pretty smooth on their side, some tight games, but are you feeling pretty good about LSU's chances at the moment?
When LSU got to that past Tennessee in the losers bracket to get to that Wednesday game against Wake Forest, I thought if LSU wins this game, the one where it looks like it's down really deep on its pitching staff, then they're going to win the whole thing. And right now they're on track to do so. It's not going to be easy. Florida, and I wouldn't go so far as to say team of destiny, because they're not really a Cinderella or anything like that. This is a team that was ranked number 1 for 12 straight weeks, but they've got everything that it takes to go and win a national championship. So does Florida on the opposite side of that. So this is going to be a really high quality baseball series between two teams that are evenly matched, similarly constructed, with talent across the board. Florida's got a little bit more rest. LSU may have a little bit more momentum because of the way that it won last night and having won 3 in a row, playing such a quality opponent in Wake Forest that Florida, while it played some one-run games and got really tested, I don't think it didn't play a team like Wake Forest, that was ranked number 1 and had guys on the mound that Wake Forest has. And so there's a lot at play here that to be considered. And I do think that LSU wins the series, but that's no gimme. And it's not going to be a surprise if Florida ended up being the winner here, because these are both really, really good baseball teams.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Wilson. You really filled this in. That makes me feel closer to Omaha. So I appreciate it. And this has been the LSU baseball tournament update brought to you by Hancock Whitney. And we'll be back here on Sunday to preview, Saturday. No, Sunday. I was right first. Sunday to talk with Leah for game 2. But look forward to that. But we'll see you in Omaha. And I know everybody back in Louisiana is watching the Tigers this weekend.